we will change the topic again, and we're going to invite Hanna Birath from Akavia. And Hanna, you are the expert on lifelong learning and the impact of AI on work life. Quite the title. And you work at Akavia, which is the trade union for university-educated professionals. So very welcome to you, Hanna.
Thank you so much.
And together with Daniel, our topic now is to discuss essentially the shifts on the job market and the impact of AI. So we can just, begin from the beginning. Changes in the job market, of course, is not new. Like many of the jobs that existed in the 60s are, not even heard of currently. So what do you think is different now? Why is this such an important shift, and how does it differ from previous shifts? Go ahead, Hanna.
Well, I think there are two main differences, and one being, of course, the speed in this shift. We're seeing it move very, very fast. And I think also, to a large extent, we see different groups being affected in this change. We've seen earlier automation processes in the job market, but now we see this transformation also affecting highly educated individuals. So to a large extent, that is members in Akavia. And this, I think, is something that we need to address in a new way, because a lot of our members are used to having a very stable place in the job market. They have a long education, they've never been struggling to find work, and now they need to think about their future in the job market, I think, from another perspective.
How about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we're going to see some shifts when we implement these larger scale systemic AI systems. Of course, I don't think the workforce will be, completely displaced or out of jobs or anything like that. But of course, it will create quite new roles, basically, where a lot of the sort of what we perceived as cognitive work and intellectual work before will be taken care of these machines. And of course, that's going to be a huge shift. But I do not, for example, necessarily see a level, and this might actually be a challenge, we talked about earlier about trust, and coming from the kind of business that I'm working with right now, a lot of the work with these kinds of systems right now is sort of trust but verify, so that they actually output the right thing. And to do that, you need a very high level of expertise, basically, so that you can actually verify what these systems output. But of course, the way of working with them will be very, very different. And I'm a little bit, not concerned, but interested in how do we build the next generation experts that can actually verify the outputs and control these systems and so on.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting point. Yes, go ahead, Hanna.
Could I just, on that note, say that I'm sure many of you have seen the recent Microsoft study looking at the impact of Gen I on critical thinking that came just recently. And I think that's such an interesting point, that one of the things that you actually train as an academic professional is your ability of critical thinking. So how do we ensure that the workforce of tomorrow is still training their ability of critical thinking when we have systems that do a lot of things that we used to be doing ourselves? I think that's a key factor to take with us.
Definitely. So how do you see companies like adapting to that shift? Are we actually geared for it in Sweden?
Well, I would say that we have a superpower in Sweden and also to some extent in the other Nordic countries. And that is the way which we organize the job market with a very high union density. And we have a cooperation between employers and workers that are unheard of in many parts of the world. So I think that sometimes we look at the Swedish model and we say, oh, we have so much regulation that will slow us down. But my view is more that this is our superpower. We have a way of organizing the job market that has made us successful in handling earlier transformations in the job market. And I'm sure that we will do that this time around as well.
Would you agree? Is regulation to our advantage or to our detriment, Daniel?
A bit of both, I'm sure. It's I do often get the sense that we tend to over-regulate things, but again, I do also think that in Sweden and in Europe in particular, there is sometimes the sense of we use regulation and uncertainty about regulation as an excuse not to do things, and that we need to get rid of. Mm-hmm. You know, we can absolutely innovate and be compliant with these things. So I think it's a lot of approach and culture and so on in how we view these kinds of regulations. They cannot be an excuse to not do anything. That's
yeah. So Hanna, I believe you might have a little bit of interesting statistics for us, because I'm kind of curious on what the sentiment is of the Swedish workers. How worried are they? How do they feel about this transition?
Yeah, so just to be super clear, I won't be able to speak for the entire Swedish workforce, but I would represent the, you know, Akavia members, which are highly educated professionals. And of course, we have 145,000 members, and among them, there are 145,000 different views of this transformation. But in general, I would say that our members are more curious than worried. Approximately 1 in 10 are worried about losing their jobs, so not very many of them. And in general, they are very active in their upskilling and very eager to start using AI in their jobs. So I think they're curious and they want to start working with AI, but I think they also need their employers to start educating them. And unfortunately, we see that in some workplaces, but not across the board in that pace that we would like it to happen.
So I think that is a great news, because in many of the research we see, many of the statistics presented, Sweden is lagging behind, but clearly that's not from the people. There's a push from below.
I think so. And of course, we see differences between member groups. I mean, we have 6 different professions. So there's differences, of course, and we also see some differences between private and public sector, with some members in the public sector being more risk, you know, risk, yes, and more skeptical. But I think also a lot of our members, they have a big responsibility on their shoulders, and they're very you know, eager to make things right. They want to be done the right way, and they feel this big responsibility. So I think that's important to remember when we look at these figures as well.
Thank you for that. So I'm kind of curious for us to speculate a little bit, like how turbulent will this transition be? How do we see kind of the future on the Swedish or global, for that matter, job market? How is AI going to affect us?
Yeah,
feel free to go crazy.
Well, I think important perspective here is that there is a big difference between the Swedish job market and other countries' job markets and globally, in that way that we usually have a more orderly way of doing things in the job market. So, for example, 2 years ago, we got a new student finance system, which is in Swedish called omställningsstudiestödet. This, I think, is a great opportunity for workers to reskill and upskill. And it's also a good example on how employer organizations and unions work together to be able to make new systems for reskilling and upskilling in the job market. So how messy will it be and how fast will it go? Maybe Daniel can answer the question on speed, and I can answer on messy. I hope not too messy, because we've seen the big transitions before, and we've been able to handle it in a good way. So my view is that this will not be messy, but it might go very, very fast.
Yeah.
Can we handle speed without messiness and turbulence?
Perhaps, but I do think, yes, it will be pretty fast. We will see relatively quick changes, but again, coming back to some earlier presentations, enterprise AI is hard, and building these systems that AstraZeneca wants to build and are surely capable of building, it will take years of actually building them, because there is so much engineering and data engineering work, etc., etc., etc. So it will not change overnight, basically. But I think in the meantime, to prevent that we don't have a mess in 5 years or 10 years, something like that, I think what you brought up earlier as well, make sure that we still have educated human experts, critical thinkers, etc., so that we do not lose that capability.
Wonderful. I have one last question for you, Hanna, a quick one that is. What can the individual do to stay relevant on the job market, according to you?
Well, I think that the main thing is to don't be scared, be prepared instead. And I would say also that take advantage of the opportunities that we have. For example, contact your transition organization, which a lot of people are having access to, and ask them what kind of support you can get in reskilling and upskilling for the future job market.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your contribution, Hanna.
Thank you.